Okay, so let's get started. Again, exploratory online seminar number 42, cohort analysis, part one. And then the part one is a layer cake chart. And like I said, we as exploratory in a this thing called SaaS, software as a service, and it's really is a business model where you charge a software license fee as subscription basis, and for a value you provide through the software. So that's what it is. It's nothing special about this particular software piece. It's just that like the thing, over the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years became a bigger and bigger. But when you think about it, it's really a subscription business, and I think that is what really matter. In terms of like data analysis part. So we happen to be providing the software as a service, but it's really a subscription. Like for example, when you have a phone or newspaper and so on. Okay, and it turned out this is a very different, not just a name, but also it's very different from the traditional software business. So therefore, we as a software vendors or providers had to learn a sort of like new way of analyzing or looking at the data. So before the SaaS or this type of subscription model is I used to be working at Oracle, and we used to sell the software, right? So like, hey, here's a database or whatever, and then you pay us $100 for using it. And then pretty much that's, I got all the money, and then I'm not going to see that customers for a while. Unless they have the problems with the software. But they're not going to pay us like next month or something like that. And then maybe like 2 years later or 3 years later, they have to upgrade, they have to buy the new software. Then they will call us, right? So that's we sometimes call perpetual license or something like that. But you get the money at one time. And therefore, it's easier to calculate how much we can spend to acquire the customers. So let's say that we collect that $100 from one customer, then we can spend less than $100 to make a profit, right? I know this is very simple, simplify. They're probably like more, what is the cost of making the software and all that stuff, but very simple world. So like when you have the revenue, the $100, then you spend $80 for the expense. This $20 is the profit. Therefore, I can use this profit to do, something, invest in the software and so on. And then once you get $100, and then again, we are now going to see that customer for a while, right? It's a very simple word. However, the SaaS business model or the subscription business model, you subscribe, right? Like you don't buy and then just go somewhere else. So you typically do monthly billing or annual. That means yearly. This is a Zoom. So for example, everybody has a Zoom these days. And in fact, this is also Zoom. And then like you go to their website and buy, but you're buying the subscription, not the whole entire software to yourself. So therefore, like you select the monthly and you pay like $15 every month or something like that. Then you as a service provider, then you collect only the monthly subscription amount, for example, $10 or something in the first month. And right. And then let's say if you spend $80 to acquire the customer, then you will lose the money. So you can't spend that much of the money like you used to. But however, of course, it's not that simple, right? It's the good news is the subscription model. If the customer keep using it, that means they keep subscribing for the long enough, then you accumulate the revenue. For example, if the customer is using for a year, then you get 12 months of the subscription revenue, and it might end up like $120 or something like that. Then that means you actually can spend $80 as an expense to acquire this customer in order to make a profit. And you can you can even spend more. So the first month in January, you might lose money, but when you think about long term, then you're actually making money. And then this repeated revenue is often called recurring, like a recurring revenue. And then And of course, you have more than one customers. Um, Oh, sorry, I somehow the Japanese at the x-axis, but it's actually January, February, March, April at the x-axis. But you have more than one customer. So let's say each customer is colored by the green and orange and red or something like that. Then each month you actually combine those revenue from all the customers, and then that becomes the monthly recurring revenue. And we sometimes call it like MRR for the monthly, or like ARR for annual recurring revenue. If you're calculating this by annual, then it becomes ARR. Okay, so that's the basic of sort of like SaaS business and the MRR and also and that all the Django language. So now there is a good MRR and a bad MRR. So like all MRR is not created equal, unfortunately. So let's say our business MRR is growing like this. And over time, so it looks like growing. It looks like a kind of flat, but it started going up again towards the end. But when you look inside each MRR, like colored by the new customer, the MRR from, I mean, revenue from new customers and revenue from existing customers. And then it turned out a lot of revenue is actually coming from the new customers. And then what this means, so existing customers is a green and the new customer is blue. So this means, so the MRR is consists with the new and existing, but the next month, some customers retain, and that's the green, it says existing part. So some retain, but some churn, right? And this one is like a lot of customers seems to churn. It's a horrible business, it looks like. But and then new customers, some of the new customer might churn, some of the existing customer from the previous months might churn. We don't know which one. We don't care at this point, but these customers churn, right? And then if only a few customers retain like this, then that means you need to acquire a lot of new customers to make up for it so that you can make your MRR grow every month. But typically, the acquiring new customer is much more expensive than retaining existing customers because in order to acquire new customers, you have to do one of those two, like marketing and sales in typical sense, right? So it's going to be costly to hire those people and do some activity and so on. But retaining existing customers, that too, like you need a customer support or customer success, and so there is that you have to pay to hire those folks. However, if the product itself keeps providing a good value, then you don't really need to spend much money to retaining existing customers comparing to acquiring new customers. So typically cost is much higher for acquiring new customers. So therefore, you don't want to have a lot of customers churning every month and then keep acquiring new customers to keep ends meet. So this is more, what you're seeing right now is more kind of healthy, if you will. And then that means you can keep the customer acquisition costs lower, but still your business is growing. And so this is more efficient and sustainable. So separating, when you look at MRR, separating new MRR and existing MRR can help you understand how sustainable and efficient your business is growing. However, the subscription business model is more than just a new customer and existing customer. So not just retaining the customer, but also how long customers retain is very critical for the subscription type business to grow rapidly. So let's look at the two cases above and below. The above case, the customer purple started January and then the churn in July. So like you use it, this person used it for like 6 months or so. Then the red bar at the very right hand side is a total revenue from that particular customer. So let's consider it's like we sometimes call customer lifetime value. Lifetime value for this purple customer in this case, well, probably like $60 or something like that. compared to, as opposed to like below the green using for 12 months. So therefore, the LTV is much higher, right? So this is pretty basic. So that means if you spend the same amount of money to acquire the customers of purple and green, then that below the green customer case, you can make a profit after you pay all the acquisition fee. You still can make a profit, but at the above the purple customer case, like you don't make any profit. You just kind of like a net the same amount of money you make and the same amount of money you acquire spend. Okay, so that means the longer the customer stays or retain, then you make more profit. It's just super simple. I don't think I'm saying anything that complicated or new thing for to most of you guys. But that's kind of like a basic working, right? So that says, then not just looking at the MRR divided by the new or existing, but even the existing, let's divide into the cohort of customers' lifetime. So for example, the green color at the bottom is 4 months. So these are the customers from I mean, this person is using for 4 months by the time of the April, and orange is by the time of April they've been using the 3 months and so on. Okay, and then then in order to do it, not just one by one, but why don't we just divide into this cohort of like 4 months or 3 months and 2 months, and then like each month probably have like 20 customers or 30 customers and so on. But why don't we just combine those as a total revenue for each cohort, and then can we see how that progresses as the time goes by? Okay, and then but typically the customers churn. You can't usually almost like impossible to keep the all the 100 customers using the same service forever, right? And that's sort of like sounds like a criminal to do that. But customer churn every month, and then one customer or 100 customer or whatever. So typically the revenue from each cohort tend to go down, right? So that you see chart like this if you do it. And then, so here is the MRR for the last month. And then when you look at it here, the ratio of the shorter lifetime customers, so like this blue color, orange color, the green color is like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So relatively shorter lifetime customers. So these MRR seems like dominates sort of like majority of the total MRR for the latest months. So that means that's actually the left-hand side. And then as opposed to the right-hand side, this is like a crazy sort of like business that no customer can churn. So that's an extreme case. But if no customer churn, then each customer actually accumulate the revenue from each customer being accumulated on top of the existing, so that growth sort of like can keep accelerate. As opposed to the left-hand side, many customer churn, and then like when you look at each bar each month, then the newer customer revenue from new customers higher. So therefore, it doesn't sort of grow as you like. It's sort of like it's growing, but it's not like it doesn't look like accelerating. What I want to say is basically by separating into each sort of cohort, in this case, cohort created based on when they converted, right? Then we can see that not only how the MRR is growing, but also how efficiently or efficient or sustainable that MRR is growing. Okay, so that's so basically, we saw, like we can compare the good MRR growth and the bad MRR growth. I'm just making it very simplified and using good or bad. But and then also when you look at this, when we are looking at this chart, what we are trying to see is a growth of each cohort, right? So like all the cohorts, are they shrinking so fast or sort of like maintaining the revenue from the first month, the second month, and third month, and so on. So in order to see the trend of each cohort, we should connect all the bars together. And then therefore the area chart at the right hand side is usually the better choice for tracking this type of a trend. So I converted the chart type from the bar chart to the area chart. And this is called the layer cake chart. So the revenue from each cohort tend to go down as the time goes by because customer churn, right? Um, so that's normal. But what we want to see is sort of like the revenue. I mean, how much revenue is sort of shrinking or decreasing, and we don't. Ideally we want to keep the revenue sort of like a stay as possible and the same amount, and over time. And then, now one of the most important tasks for SaaS business is to reduce the churn by improving the product and the customer support, and including the customer onboarding. So this type of the chart gives you sort of like, hey, where is the problem? Like which cohort has a problem, right? And then if there is no churn and the product is super good and the customer support is super good, or it's almost impossible to churn, and then each cohort, a new cohort, will be added as a growth of your business. Right. So this is the best, like ideal looking, but actually there is even better than this almost like an impossible no churn layer cake. So this is the more elegant layer cake. And of course, I was just kidding. That was just a kind of a stupid joke, but I'm serious. There is something better. So what that means? So the MRR usually decreases when the customer churn. Um, but however, when you look at the chart, usually from like one of those like a crazy unicorn companies, a tech startup, like a Dropbox, for example, this is their layer cake. And typically you see this chart when they go IPO and they file something called S1. And then usually they put this kind of chart if they have a good revenue growth, MRR growth. And then look at this one, each line is actually, it says Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, but any color looks like it's color, each color itself is growing, right? It's becoming bigger. It's not just the same. It's actually becoming bigger. It's easy. This one is easier. Like this is Slack. This and also like annual recurring revenue ARR, and then each cohort. Look at the for example the bottom 2015 cohort. It's dramatically growing. And why is it growing? Well, it turned out, I mean, SaaS business or a subscription business, customers upgrade, right? So upgrade, we call it expansion, meaning customers upgrade the subscription plan to get more or better services, or even without upgrade, sometimes you increase the number of the users under the same account, especially like Slack or even Dropbox or whatever. You just keep adding the users, right? So upgrade or adding new users, they're all considered as expansion. And when customers upgrade a plan, the revenue from them will increase, right? Um, but also, customers can downgrade, right? With usual business service, and then, or maybe like decrease the number of the users. So these we call it contraction. So if the expansion is greater than the combination of churn and contraction, then your MRR actually can, I mean, from the existing sort of like retained MRR can grow. So that means without even like new customers, your MRR can grow even when you have the customer churn. Okay, so this is called negative churn, meaning usually the churn meaning like a decrease of MRR, but actually MRR somehow from the existing customers increase. So this is called negative churn. And when you have the negative churn, then the MRR will increase over time. And that's what we are seeing with the Dropbox or Slack charts. It's not like they're cheating. They're actually having this negative churn like crazy. And that's why they're growing so fast and so much. Okay, so the layer cake chart helps you understand how efficient your MRR is growing, taking into account for expansion, contraction, and churn by visualizing the MRR by cohort of the conversion months. Okay, so now that we know the layer cake, and then let's make the layer cake with Exploratory. Okay, so the rest I've created step-by-step stuff in the slides, and I'm going to share that later. But here I'm going to show you how to do it quickly in this sort of like a demo fashion. Okay, so let's do that. And to do, I also uploaded the data so that you can actually do it yourself later. So I uploaded to here, this exploratory.io, our server, and as this way. So you can go here and you can download it, or you can access directly from here, data catalog, and then you type like layer cake. And then there are two layer cakes. One is for Japanese and then the other for the English. So like we want to select this English one and then click import button. This will download this data like we are looking at here directly inside Exploratory. And I'm going to just click on the save button and then make the name. Let's call it like a cohort analysis layer cake or something like that. And typically, like you usually get this data from your database or a CSV Excel file and so on. But here, I got it from the data catalog. Okay. And then now the data is kind of this way. So payment date, user ID, price, segment. This is typical payment data that you might, get from like a Stripe or whatever the payment service. Okay. And then you can start creating a layer. You want to create a layer cake. However, there's one important thing before creating a layer cake. So it takes a little bit of data wrangling. So right hand side is a chart. This is where we want to get to. However, to create this chart, um, the oops, this one is pointing to repeat by. No, it's actually color by. Okay, here you go. In order to create those cohort, in this case, the cohort is presented as a color, right? So that we need a conversion date. So we want to know each user's conversion date. Then we can use the information to create the cohort of converted date or conversion months. But the data doesn't have it. The one we have. And typically, like when you download the payment data from your payment service, usually don't have that information. If you have it, then it's great. You can start creating a chart right away. But if you don't have it, then you can create that very easily because we can assume the first payment date as the conversion date, right? It's a very simple way. Then how we can basically calculate this value. It's pretty simple. You group the data by each user, right? So like user A, user B, user C. And once you do it, then there is a function called min. It's like that returns minimum value. And use that for this payment date column. Then it will return the minimum value of the date for each user. In this case, for example, 2019, January 17 for user A. Then you get that conversion date column. Then now like you're off to go to create a chart. Okay, so let's do that here in the Exploratory. We want to create a conversion date column. So first, what we want to do, if I'm going to just make a little mistake intentionally, but if I go here, payment date, and then go to the create calculation, and then if I use the min function, for example, like this, and then I'm going to call it conversion day or something. And what is going to happen is we got the 2019 May 17. And then this value gets repeated all the way down, right? And if I go to the summary view and I go to the conversion date, every user has a 2019 May 17. And that's ridiculous because each user should have the different conversion date. And what's going on here is basically it turned out this min calculation function returns the minimum value of the whole data of 12,615 rows or all users. What we wanted to do is minimum date for each user. To do, we can group this data frame before we call this mean function. So let's go to the first step before that step that we added. And then we can use this group by to group the data frame into each user. So if I select the group, and then now each user is colored in a different way, different color. So like blue users and the green user and the yellow user and so on. And once we do this, then if we call this mean function, then that is going to return the mean value for each user. So let's click on the third step. And then now you see here, for example, the first users that August 10 is the minimum value. The second, the green is August 10 is the minimum value, and so on. Okay, so it looks like that. So now we have the conversion information, and we can start creating the chart from this one too. But as a sort of like manner to, if you don't need the data frame to be grouped for doing something further data wrangling or chart creation or something, I highly recommend to ungroup this here. You can do that from the group by button, because if the data frame is grouped, if you happen to add extra another like a data wrangling step or something, any step you will add against the group data frame will take it as a group data frame. So some of the function might give you this unexpected result, or some of the stuff actually gives you the expected thing. So if you know whatever you are going to do requires your data frame to be grouped, then that's fine. You keep it a group data frame, but otherwise, if you're even not sure, then just ungroup it so that there will be no surprise. Okay, so now here, then I'm going to go to the chart, and then I can start creating that layer cake chart. So that so creating a layer cake chart is pretty simple. So select the area chart, and the x-axis, I want to select the payment date. And then this time, what I want to do is I want to see the monthly MRR. So therefore, I'm going to change this to months to round. So then I see like May, June, July, August, and so on. Okay, I'm gonna hide the left-hand side. And then now we want to create the cohort. But before doing so, this one, y-axis right now is the number of rows. So it's just like a number of the payments we are seeing. Well, we want to change that to MRR or revenue. So change that to the price. And we can keep sum as the default aggregation calculation. And then now we are looking at MRR, so just using the area chart. And from here, we want to divide into different cohort. So using the color, then assign the conversion date. The default is year, but we want to change that to months so that we can divide into the cohort of conversion months, not the conversion year. So I'm going to select the months, and then here it goes. So it looks like a layer now. So now we can see, okay, so the blue cohort, which is like 2019 June, is here, and it seems like not much losing. It's kind of like a same amount, and so on. But there's one problem with this chart actually. When you show this to somebody, some people tend to get confused because somehow like we intuitively as a human being understand something, the newer thing is accumulated on top of the older thing. That's somehow like, when you look at the, those hill, split hill or something like that, okay, always the older ones at the bottom, the new ones kind of piled up on top, right? So this one too, when you see this, it's kind of not, it's not so intuitive to see how the revenue is being accumulated. So we want to change this order. So right now, the older one is top and the newer one is bottom. We want to flip this order. And how we do that? Well, we go to the color, and there's a color sort order. And you can select this, and then right now it's the top to bottom. Why don't we just change to bottom to top? And in this way, now the blue, which is a 2019 May cohort at the bottom, And then as it goes higher, then like newer cohorts being added, or the revenue from new cohorts being added. Okay, so that's now looks like this is basically what we wanted to get. One more thing I like to do. You remember that when we look at this data here, we had a segment information. When we go to the summary, we have the segment to the business and the consumer, and how those cohort growth differs between the business customers and the consumer customers. So that's the try it up. Let's try it up. So here we can use a repeat by, and then we can separate this chart into those consumer and business. Here I'm going to assign a segment, and then we have the two layer cakes. And then now here, I tend to like kind of compare it to bottom and then top like this. So like I'm going to change the number of columns and then click on the fit, make sure that those two charts fit in the same window. And then this way, like I can see. And this is actually kind of interesting because, for example, here, the newer chart, for example, pink and gray, the consumer side, the customer sort of like actually expanding. However, the business side is a pink and a gray. It seems like a contracting, so or like reducing the revenue decreasing. So it seems like something is going on. So we might want to do something, talk to some, people taking care of the business side of the customers, and so on. So we can compare these two. And then also the last thing is you can change the color. So this might be I actually like it because each cohort is presented in a distinctively different color, so it's easy to see. But sometimes you might want to use different color. This sort of like kind of gradient color palette, like for example blue or something. Then you see sort of like a color difference and a newer or you can actually change that color order as well. But newer color is darker, and sorry, to change the color. Oops, what's going on here? Color setting. Oh, somehow. Oh, oh, somehow like a color setting window is not showing up again. But anyway, you could, I'm using actually this development build. The patch is about to go out today, so maybe there's something wrong in there. But here, like you can see, sort of like a different color gradient. So it's up to you which one makes sense. Like I said, if you want to see like which cohort has a problem or something like that, like it might be the distinct color that I used to use before this. It might be better. Okay, so that's a layer cake chart. So let me just summarize. So that acquiring new customers is much more expensive than retaining existing customers in general. So therefore, we want to keep the ratio of MRR from existing customers higher to make our business grow more efficiently. But separating into the existing and the new is not enough, right? So because the customer lifetime revenue, that's what matters for SaaS business or subscription business. So then the LTV grows as customers retain longer. So it's important to understand how the MRR for each cohort of customers based on the converted months or year is growing over time. Then the layer cake chart visualizes the growth of MRR by the cohort of converted months or year, if you're tracking by the ARR, and help you understand how efficient and sustainable your business is growing. So it's all good so far, but each cohort grows or shrinks in different ways, like we saw. And for example, here, the September cohort seems to decrease the MRR much more than the May cohort. And what is going on here? The September cohort seems to have big churn rate that in the second month. So we want to compare the September cohort with others, right? So what is going on? Is this bad, or is something going on with the September? However, we want to compare orange to orange. So not comparing on September. We want to compare the second month's churn against other cohorts second month. So second month to second month, or third month and third month, and so on. So idea is we want to look the chart like this. So this one is basically showing the retention rate. Retention rate is basically the opposite of churn rate. Right, 100% minus churn rate is the retention rate. So we want to know how the customer retaining by using retention rate for each cohort. In this case, again, the cohort is a conversion date, conversion months, and how that changes over time. Then we can actually compare among the cohorts and which cohorts performing better or worse. And also another thing we want to know is that this is getting better. Because if it's getting better, then that means the product and service is getting better to retain the customers. And we can use survival analysis algorithm to calculate the retention rates over time for each cohort. So this seems to be kind of simple, but it turned out it takes a little bit of things that we have to take care. So therefore, we'd rather use the algorithms to take care of that things. And then it's called survival curve or Kaplan-Meier algorithm, if you have ever heard of it. So that is I'd like to cover next month, not next month, next seminar, next week. So by comparing the retention rate trends like we saw in the previous slides, then we can answer the following questions. So for example, have your product improvements, like you've been releasing a new version or whatever, but has that been really helping the retaining the customers? Or are we acquiring the right customers for the value that we provide, because otherwise the customers don't retain? Or is onboarding experience that like you sign up and then you get some support, or either from the people or from the product or documents or whatever, is getting improved so that they're helping to retain the customers in the first month or second month? So those type of questions comes up often in any SaaS business or subscription business. So we can answer these questions by looking at the data like the previous slide. So that is the next seminar's topic. So next one, the cohort analysis part 2, survival curve, is the one like I'm going to cover next Wednesday. Okay, and then you can find our online seminar information from our website. Go to Learn and the online seminar, and you can see the upcoming seminars or the past seminars recording as well. Okay, so that's it for today, and I'd like to open up for a Q&A session. Okay, here we go.